Let's see. My background in bicycle racing. I started racing when I was 12 years old at the Red Zinger Mini Classic. I actually raced go-karts a little bit before that and didn't like the fact that I could never drive my go-kart to the local 7-Eleven. So this one day, my friend, his dad, who raced triathlon, we stole his racing bike, and I realized how fast I could get around the neighborhood on a racing bike and not get arrested. So I figured that I'd sell my go-kart and get a racing bike. So yeah, I did that, and then I decided once I had the racing bike that I should try to race it. So I showed up to my first race, got dead last place, got passed by Chris Weary like I was standing still in this time trial because I didn't quite understand. I had blue corduroy OP shorts on and a pair of Chuck Taylor high tops. And but for some reason, I decided to stick with it. I'm not really sure why, because I was horrible that first year. And then that fall, after the Red Zinger Mini Classic, I decided to, buy cleats and buy some cycling shorts and all that fun stuff. And the rest is history. Well, I retired from European racing in 2002, and then I raced one last season for Prime Alliance in the United States in 2003, but that was more of a transition year where I'd actually already started what was then the 5280 Subaru junior team, which was Peter Stetna, Alex Howes, Timmy Duggan, a lot of the guys that are on the big team now. Actually, of the 7 guys that were on that original team, 3 of them are now on the pro team. And I'd started that up. I was actually funding most of it out of my own pocket. It was just fun. It was I felt like juniors and U23s weren't really being paid much attention to at that point in time in U.S. cycling, and so I decided I wanted to try to do something for just some Colorado kids that needed a chance to see if they could take it to the next level. It was, at that point in time, certainly not my intention to turn this into a Tour de France Pro Tour team. But little by little, more sponsors took interest in what we were doing. We got some very positive press from people like Villeneuve. And there was a point at which Doug Ellis came to our team presentation when the team had grown to the point where it was TI Kref. And Doug showed up to the team presentation and spoke with me a little bit, liked what he saw, and then flew me out to New York 2 or 3 days later to discuss how to make this into a Pro Tour team. And, I sat down with him and very clearly outlined what it was going to take over, a 5-year process. And he agreed to that, but I shouldn't say he agreed to it because I wasn't pitching him. He was actually convincing me that this is what he wanted to do. I was just showing him the roadmap. And I think in the end, he was the one who convinced me to do it because, at that point in time, I was more interested in just developing my own life outside of cycling and having this little team as my hobby. But he convinced me to push this to the next level and that we could do it in a way that, that was acceptable for me. And we did, and here we are. Luckily for Doug and myself, we were able to, to find sponsors like Garmin and Transitions that allowed us to keep this team going, in perpetuity for long term, and that we found sponsors that also sort of bought into the dream or the ideals that we had as far as how this team is run. Nowadays, I'm not in the car every day by any means. And a lot of team managers sit in the passenger side of team cars in a lot of races. I can't do that because I get horribly car sick. So either I'm driving the team car or I'm not in the team car, but I cannot be in the passenger seat very often. I've really focused on just on doing this team in the way I wanted to, and that is that the athletes are treated as human beings, as people foremost, and as athletes second, and that that they are able to make the decisions that they want to make, that they should make, that their moral compass would lead them to naturally without any sort of pressures from outside. And that, honestly, that they're encouraged to really believe in the fact that they can win races clean, and that that the team is constantly looking for ways to help them achieve that goal, as opposed to you just standing up and saying, well, okay, everybody, we don't want any doping controversies on this team, so we have to win every race we enter, but but no positive tests. No, it's I mean, that's not the way this team is at all. It's very much an active effort to make sure everyone understands the philosophy of this team is that we're not going to tolerate any doping, that we are looking at your tests on a regular basis and making sure that that's not occurring. We are certainly not turning a blind eye toward anyone on the team, but that we are going to be, well, we're probably doubly or twice the oversight, that maybe some people would think is necessary on our riders, but we're triple supportive in that we're constantly trying to, adjust things and just make the life of the riders a little bit more comfortable, hoping that generates higher performances in the long term. And quite frankly, I think that overall philosophy of really supporting the person of the rider first has allowed us to perform very well at the highest level in a long-term sense. And it's also allowed us to develop riders, Tyler Farrar being the best example, who 2 or 3 years ago was not a star, and that we brought him along step by step and just supported his career, and now we're bearing the fruits of that effort. The radios are an important technological tool as far as creating the best competition scenarios possible in cycling in general. I think that perhaps people overestimate the direct control that directors have on their riders. I would say that Matt White and myself almost consistently, or always consistently say to the riders, guys, you are in the race, you are at the front of the race, you are able to make decisions in real time. We are sometimes almost 1 kilometer behind where you are, and the information gap to when we have appropriate information and able to deliver that forward from a tactical standpoint that's a big, it's a big difference. So the radios are more used for conveying conditions of the road going forward, weather conditions going forward, position of people in feed zones, any sort of hazards on the road, distance left into the race, distance left to the next climb. So just to avoid the riders having to pull out little cards and trying to look at a map while you're in the middle of a peloton. It's conveying basic information is 80% of it. There is some tactical information that goes on, some very broad-based decisions. If, for instance, there's a breakaway off, okay, we're going to chase or we're not going to chase. But, and who is going to be in that chase. But in the heat of the moment, when the race is really happening, this guy's attacking here, this guy's attacking there, we don't have enough information to make the correct choices back in the car. You have to rely on the intelligence of the riders to make those choices. So to me, the radios it's a great device to outline the conditions of the race for the riders and to give them broad strategies. It is not what I think it is sometimes purported to be, in that it's almost like we're sitting back there with joysticks and maneuvering the riders around. It's nowhere close to that. And quite frankly, like with any other technology, sometimes it rains, the radios short out, we have no communication with the riders, which is less than ideal. Well, I mean, my position on the radio battle is I understand the desire of UCI and ASO that they would like to make racing more interesting, more intuitive, more based on a rider's intelligence as opposed to a director's intelligence or a director's desire. I think that's just not a well thought out motive. I think the radios are a piece of technology like we all have in the rest of our lives at this point in time that enable the riders to make the decisions and to use their intelligence with more information than they would previously have. Banning radios is effectively trying to it's trying to close down the number of reference points and the amount of information a rider has. So it's actually making them make incorrect decisions. So to me, it's almost reducing their ability to use their intelligence as opposed to increasing the ability for them to use their intelligence. So for me, I think the riders who benefit the most from radios are very intellectually gifted riders, such as David Miller, such as Lance Armstrong, who have a good mind, and that they're actually able to utilize that information in order to win more often, as opposed to the race just turning into a random set of events which someone ends up winning because there was a lack of information. I think it's just a step backwards that will actually favor randomization of race results as opposed to seeing the best athlete and the most intelligent athlete winning the race. And I'd rather see the best athlete and the most intelligent athlete win the race. Well, the biggest protocol is just when you're done with your statement, you say over, and when you've said something forward that someone acknowledges it, says, yeah, got that, or copy, or whatever you want to say. That's the only thing, is just so that each side knows that the communication has been transferred. That's about it. There's not as much talk as you think going on with the radios. It's I think in a 4-hour race, there's probably a total of 10 minutes of actual speaking on the radios, maybe 15. More than anything, one thing I had to learn after my first year is that you have to, as a director, you have to guard your emotions. You cannot get emotional over the radio because that really distracts the riders, and they're working so hard out there that they don't feel the same emotions you do sitting in a car. You're allowed to sort of get pent up in a car, but they don't feel that. So when you are getting emotional, all it's doing is actually detracting from their work. So it's very much, you just need to deliver information in a calm way. And that's the best way to get the best results out of the riders. No, my feeling about the Amgen Tour of California turning pro tour, it's mixed. I certainly feel like the continental teams on the U.S. scene, this is their largest stage. This is why their sponsors are involved in the game. This race makes American cycling flourish. And I certainly wouldn't want to see a team like Jelly Belly go away because there wasn't a Tour of California that they could enter anymore. And so that part scares me a little bit. Strictly from a global perspective, from the perspective of the president of the AGCP, I would say, of course, I want a pro tour race to be in the United States for the first time. I want to see teams bringing their top riders to this race to earn world ranking points in this race, and to really to bring the best rosters possible with all the best teams possible, because I think that really lends to the prestige of the race. It lends to the global image of the race, and it shows that the United States is advancing in world level competition, just like the Tour Down Under, and that cycling is truly globalizing as opposed to being a Western European sport that occasionally has a couple little forays into other countries. My favorite thing about the Tour de France is just the patrimony of that race, the heritage of that race, the enthusiasm of the public, the month-long party that it is. I mean, it's incredible to see the emotion and the enthusiasm of people from all over the world coming to France to watch cycling. It makes you feel like you're part of something far beyond just bike racing on its own, which I think is something we don't experience very often in cycling. So just the vibe, the feeling, the emotion of that race, it's incredible. My least favorite part of the race kind of goes along with that, is that when you have that many people from all around the world watching with intense interest as to what's going on, of course that comes with a lot of pressure, a lot of nerves, a lot of moments that really don't feel like they have anything to do with bike racing, but as a team manager, you're constantly having to deal with your sponsors and their expectations, and the race organization and their expectations, and the riders and their expectations, and sometimes it gets to be a lot in that race because everyone wants so much more out of the team and out of yourself and and out of the organization in that race, and the little details that might be overlooked in a smaller race cannot be overlooked in the Tour de France. I think we're unique, and we're the only team in cycling that will be split in that we will be pursuing the general classification with Christian Vande Velde. Luckily, his collarbone surgery was successful, and he's already back on the bike. But we're also going to be putting a very strong effort into Tyler. We're lucky in that Christian is mainly viewed as a dark horse, and that we're certainly not expected to control the race by anyone's expectations. To help him in GC, we can sort of ride on the coattails of others in the GC race and just let Christian perform the best he can. With Tyler, we have slowly recruited a much better lead-out team for him, and it's a lead-out team that is more specific toward the Tour de France than it is any other race in the world. With the riders that we hired with Robbie and Murillo, they're guys that are really set to take advantage of the large and chaotic bunch sprints that the Tour de France has. Our goal, first and foremost, is to win a stage with Tyler, because even though he's won a stage in pretty much every other race in the world and has proven himself on the largest stages over and over again at this point, he still hasn't won a stage of the Tour de France. So that's the first and foremost goal. When we get that out of the way, then we can start looking at things like the green jersey and making a stronger effort towards that. It's difficult to know what to expect from Lance. He certainly could turn it around by the Tour, or he might not. I don't know. If you look historically, riders who come back, after retirement or after a suspension or whatever, after they've been away a couple years, it's usually their first year back is very, very good, and then their second year back, it's more difficult to get back on that level. I don't know why that is, but if you look, like Vinokurov, this is his first year back, really. I mean, he raced a little bit last year at the end of the year, but he's incredible this year. If you look at Basso, he was right off the bat incredible. Now this year, it seems like he's maybe struggling a little bit more. I don't know. It just seems that's the history. It's counterintuitive, because you would think that after they'd have a year of racing under the belt, that actually they'd be able to perform at a higher level. That's what I would think. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen that. And so with Lance, he's an exceptionally gifted athlete. He's an exceptionally hardened athlete and focused athlete. So, I'm sure he's doing everything he possibly can to get to the level where he'll be a podium contender. But it's hard to tell. I mean, there's nothing this year that would point to him being a real contender to the podium. But at the same point in time, you could say that about a lot of his rivals too. That sometimes it just takes guys a long time to get going, for the Tour, and especially with age, sometimes it takes really a long time to kind of get an old diesel started. As far as the GC race in the Tour de France, I think we're lucky now that Christian is injured once again, in that the hardest part of the Tour de France is at the end of the Tour de France. The long time trials at the end, up the Tourmalet is at the end. So it gives him a little bit of time to get into his full condition before the race starts proper. Christian historically has always been better in the Pyrenees than he has been in the Alps. So I think that sort of late push combined with the Pyrenees coming at the end is suited to him. We just got to get him to the start in one piece. Well, it's flattering that Johan and Levi think that Dave is the biggest threat to them in this event. Dave's a different rider than Levi. Obviously, he's not as explosive. He's never proven to climb quite as well as Levi. However, in a pan-flat time trial that's not very technical, like the one in Los Angeles this year, it's certainly more suited than the Solvang time trial was for Dave. So our question is, as a team, how do we get Dave to that time trial without any significant time losses? And that's going to be tricky, because Levi wants to put time into Zabriskie before that time trial, and will certainly do everything he can to make that happen. So that's a little bit the battle of this race, is to see if we can keep Zabriskie, on equal par with Levi until the time trial, or if we're unable to do that. And I think that's going to be one of the exciting stories of this race.